Hello everybody, welcome back to the Angular tutorial series. This is Atul from IT Codes. In the last tutorial, we learned about Angular forms and that were template driven forms. Now this is the second part of Angular forms. We will be learning about reactive forms, the form group property, form control name property and validation in reactive forms. So let's go into the coding and start with creating our first reactive form. So first of all, we will be creating new component for learning the reactive form. So we create the new component and generate, and we give the name as login form. We give the name as reactive login. So here the component is created. Now we first create the HTML over here. So we again do the same thing which we did for the last form creation. Dot column slash sn 5. So these are all bootstrap classes. I use the container, row, column sm5. And we use the form tag. Infill set. Form group. Inside that first would be label for. So first we'll be giving the email ID in the login form. So it is label for email. The input box, that is text. Give the ID as email. Class as form control. That is again a bootstrap class. The next would be the password box. So copy this much thing, paste it, we change it to password. Input type would be password. The class is form control, and we need two more buttons over here. So we remove both the tags over here. We tag as button. First would be reset. Class equals to btn and btn as default. That will be the white button. Next button would be a submit button. So that is type submit. Class we give as btn dash primary. So this is our simple form having two components, that is email box and the password text box, and two buttons. So to call this particular form, we'll again change in app component. I just comment the previous one and I call app login. It's reactive login. So this should call that particular form which we created just right now. So we start the application. It should load the designed form, just the form. We haven't done anything in the coding and everything. So just run that form. Okay, this is giving you the form. There should be some spacing. So we just give two classes over here. Empty5 at the bottom also. Empty5, that is margin top equals to 5. So this solves the spacing issue. Now this form is created. Now in our old form, that is template forms, we did use ng model for binding. That is this, we use the ng model attribute to bind it. Now in reactive forms, we won't be having something as ng model binding. In reactive forms, we will have something known as form group. We have to pass over here the form group property. We just specify as form group. We have to give the name of the form, that is, this is the login form, so I will be specifying the name as login form, that is given over here. Now this is giving you an error over here. Form group cannot bind since it isn't a known property for the form. Now this is occurring why? Because for using reactive forms, first and foremost, we would have to add reactive form module in our app module.ts file. So once we add this, we should be able to use this. Now this is again giving you an error because in the TS file we haven't declared anything as login form. So first we go to the TS file, remove this also. We go to the TS file. In the component TS file, first and foremost, what we will be declaring is, we will be declaring the form with the form group class. So I give the name as login form. And the type would be form group. So we will get the form group import over here also. This is done. Now we can use over here as form group. Use the property binding and I'll give the name as login form that I specified inside. So now this is not giving me an error. So remember what we did is we defined the login form of type form group, and in our form tag we gave the form group property and we gave the same name which has been defined over here, that is login form. So this is done. Now again in our TS file, we'll go in the TS file, and the next step what we will be doing is we will be giving a variable which is a boolean variable, that is just for checking that the form is submitted or not. So I name it as submitted and we give the value equals to false. Initially we make it false. That is done. We define a constructor of our class. Now in constructor we use the next object which is used for creating the reactive form, that is form builder. So we create a private object with the name as fb and I give it as form builder. So this is done. Now we have two objects over here. One is of form group and one is of form builder. Now this form builder is what? We will be grouping the entire form components inside this form builder object. So we will be using this FB object to group the entire form components. There are two components over here. In this form we have email and password. In other form you will be having some many text box. So that will be grouped inside your form group using your form builder object. Now we need a method named as init over here, that is ng init. Init will be called whenever the component is initialized or loaded. So for that we have to give as implements on init event. So on init is done over here, it will come over here also. Here it is giving an error. Now when you say quick fix, it says implement the interface on init. So we just click on it, the interface is implemented, so error will be gone. Now we remove the void thing which is over here, and we also remove the throw exception class over here. So this will be done and called when your component will be initialized, that is ng on init. Now inside this we have to initialize our form. Initialize this particular form components using the form control attribute. So over here in your init method we'll refer this particular form group object which we defined over here, that is login form. This dot login form equals to this dot form builder object, that is FB dot group. As I said, we will be grouping the components using your form builder object. So we say this dot FB dot group, and inside that method will be providing the array of all your text boxes. Now array of your all text boxes should be having the same name as we have defined over here, that is email and password. So over here we defined as email, we define the square bracket array. Inside that we want to define the validations over here also. Now for validations in your reactive forms, you have the class as validators, and whichever validations you want to fire, you have to give it over here. So for that, if you are having multiple validations, so I give array over here, and in the validators I say required. So first we will be just giving required over here. So this is your one text box which is created, that is email. We give an array, first value is blank, and then validators dot required. So this will make the box of email inside your TS file. We are initializing the box over here. So email is done over here. Again the second box has to be initialized, so I give comma over here. In second box is password. So same thing, password, and inside it I'll again give validators dot required. So these are your two text boxes initialized inside your init method using your form group, that is fb dot group method, form builder dot group. Now after that we'll be going in our HTML to bind that particular values, that is we'll be giving the value from here to your TS file. So for that, till now we just created a simple form, and these are all classes of bootstrap itself. Now what we have to do in your reactive forms is we have to give a property which is named as formControlName. So I specify the property as formControlName, and I give the name as email inside it. Now we will be just checking where it is used. So right now just we are giving a property as formControlName. Instead of normal name property, I used as formControlName, and we specify the property the same name as this ID. This can be different, but we are giving it same. So there is no any other error or any problem. Otherwise you can define something different, but that different has to be used below also. Now we have already given the validation for required. Now this is used for calling that particular values. Now inside your TS file, we have to first return or get the values which are being submitted, or which are being changed. So for that we give a method as get over here, get, and I'll just say login form control. We define the function as get and login form control, and just say return this dot login forms dot control. So the form controls which are being created over here are returned by this particular method known as login form control. So this login form control method will give me the access to this particular values, that is email and password validates which are created over here. So in our HTML file, now we can access that particular values over here. We give a span tag for checking the validations or printing the error messages. Span, I say class equals to an inbuilt class of bootstrap, that is text danger. Now here we give the star ng if, that is asterisk ng if, same as we did in our template driven forms. Ng if, in this we can check the text box is touched, the text box is clicked, or the cursor is inside your text box. So now over here we will be referring the control name which we defined inside. So over here we are given the name as login form, but we will be using this particular values, that is this dynamic controls which are created here are being written by this particular function, get function. So I will just use this login form control. So inside my if, I will be giving as login form control dot. Now I can use the text boxes which are created inside. That is, we are using this dynamic form group text box email. So over here you get is login form control dot email is touched. So I give the method as touched, or that is pipe sign, and your boolean variable submitted. So whether this anything has been done, and again the same thing, login form control dot email dot errors question mark dot required. So this will check whether the text box has been touched or the submit button has been clicked, and it will check for the error required. So if somebody has gone inside the text box and came out directly, or has just directly clicked the submitted button, this error will be shown. The text which will be written over here will be shown. So over here we type as please enter email. Please enter your email address or email. Okay. Now the functionality is done. We have given the validation inside your TS file using this dynamic controls which are created using a form group object, and we have written all the controls by giving a function as get login form controls. So it will return me two text boxes, that is email and password, with this particular validation. Both are right now just required. We just checked it over here using the ng if loop, ng if, that is login form control, which is the object over here, get this particular function, and dot email dot touched, or it is submitted, and login form control dot email dot error is required. If this is done, then it should show me please enter email. Our application is running. I remove the text box from here. I remove it here also, but still it is not fired. Let us check. You have given us login form control name is email, and it is touched. Email is submitted, span text engine, and this is done. Okay, there must be some mistake over here. Let me check. It should be showing us in the console. Okay, console is giving an error. Okay, ng if. So I just did a mistake. The ng if I should be capital. Now it should be done. Okay. Now if I go inside the text box and just come back, it is giving me an error. Please enter your email. Once we type inside it, the error goes. So one validation is done for your email box. That is, we have done required validation for your email. The same thing has to be done for your password box also. We just copy this entire span tag. We paste it over here. In ngif, we'll just change the control name, password.touched, and password dot errors equals required, please enter password. So this should make the validation on the password box also be working. So I just save it, click over here, I remove the value from the password. Okay, it is not working, it is also having some error. Let me check, maybe the name or something is wrong. In console there is no error. Let us check back over here. The spelling over here is okay. In your HTML, okay, there's a mistake over here. So we just say password, the spelling correction, the typo error. We solved it. Now we go inside and we check both validations. Email is firing, password is also firing. So we did required validation on both the text boxes. Now one more validation has to be done, and that is the email validation, the valid input of your email. So for that, in your reactive ts files, we'll go inside email, and over here we can specify one more validation. So for that, we have to specify a comma inside the square bracket, and we give as validators dot pattern. Now pattern is a function. Now the pattern we already did in your template driven form also, that is this pattern. So we select this same pattern over here, we copy this pattern. In the reactive form, we give it in the single quotes. So in your ts file, you have specified that the email should be required as well as it should follow this particular pattern. Email should be valid. Now following error has to be shown in your HTML also. In HTML, we will be creating another span tag. So for that span tag, I copy the same tag in your email because it has to be same. That is login form control.email.touch, whether the client has gone inside it and then submitted. And over here, instead of your required, what we will be doing is pattern. And we change the message is please enter valid email. So this should work. As we remove the enter email fires, as I type, and if I don't give a valid email address, then the error message shows me that please enter a valid email. Now we type valid email over here, that is atul@itcourse.com or hotmail.com, whatever, and I type the password. So both the validations are gone. Now to access this value or submit this form, we haven't done anything inside it. So for that, we go in the ts file again. In the ts file, we define a function for receiving the values. So for that I create a function as onSubmit. Inside onSubmit, first and foremost what we'll be doing is this dot, our variable which was submitted, we make it true. So whether it is false or true, we are checking in that condition. We are doing it true over here, that is on submit. This dot submitted should be true, which was false first, and then I check that if this dot login form, that is our form group variable, dot valid. If it is valid, then I just alert a message over here. Check values in console. We just say check values in console. So this will give a pop-up over here, and then we get the values in console, console.log, and inside console.log I say this dot login form dot value. So this should submit our value. So first and foremost we open the console. In our console right now we don't see anything. We just change the value and I submit. Okay, it is not calling. We just forgot to call over here. So in your HTML we have to call that particular function which we created right now. So that will be done in the form tag. In form tag the event is ng submit. So on ng submit what we are calling is our own submit function. So we call the function over here. Okay, we empty the console, we type the value, and as we submit it pops up the message check values in console, and inside that you get this particular value, that is email value which we submitted and password the value which we submitted. So this is how your reactive form works with the validations. A quick overlook what we did: we created the form using a bootstrap elements, that is form, and inside that we just created two text boxes, that is email text box and the password text box, that is input type equals to text. Important thing inside your reactive forms, first and foremost thing, you have to add the reactive forms module inside your app module ts. Inside your HTML you have to give the attribute or the property as form group. In form group you have to specify a name. Now before specifying the name you have to define that particular variable name over here with the type as form group, that is we have defined it login form over here, and this form group variable has to be given over here, that is form group equals to login form. After that we created the dynamic components using your ng init method, that is on ng init. For that you have to just do as implements on ng init, and that should make this particular event over here. Now after that what we did is we initialize the form controls. So for initializing the form controls in your constructor, first and foremost you have to create one more object of form builder. So there are two objects which are new inside this reactive form, that is form group and form builder. We create the object in constructor, so it will be initialized when the component loads, because the constructor will be called initially. Thereafter what we did in init method is this dot login form equals to this dot fb, that is fb is your form builder object, dot group. So we group both the text box using a form builder object. Now inside that you have to specify the text box names, that is email and password, using an array. Inside the array we have to validate it using the validator array. So for that we just give comma and then square bracket, validators are required. Both the things we did required first, and to display the error message we have to give the span tag over here. in span we did the same checking as we did in our own template driven forms, that is login form control dot email dot touch. Now this login form control is returned from a method which is defined as get login form controls. This has to be done. Why? Because the controls are created over here with the validation. Now this control has to be returned to the HTML. So for returning the control boxes over here, we define the method as get login form control. Inside that we return the entire form controls using method as return this dot login form dot controls. So it will return this text boxes. Now this text boxes can be accessed in your HTML over here, that is login form control dot email dot touch and submitted. Submitted is your false variable which we have defined, that is a boolean variable to check whether the form is submitted or not, and also our error messages, that is login form control dot email dot errors required. So required will be checked this way. Now in your email you have to specify an regular expression also that we did in our template form also, that is pattern, but in that we used to define the pattern over here, but in your reactive forms we have to define the pattern validation also inside your group. So over here you specify a comma and say validators dot pattern. In that pattern you specify the same pattern which we use in our template driven forms, and this should work. So for getting error message for this particular pattern, we go inside your HTML and we give another span tag. In that span tag we check the same things, that is touched and submitted, and the other thing which we check is errors, and it should be pattern. So both the validations are checked. So this is how you create your reactive form, and you can validate using the validators class which is inbuilt inside your reactive forms. We will be giving more tutorials on Angular and other languages. So you can just follow or subscribe our channel for getting more tutorials on other languages as well as Angular. Thank you.